What if I told you the biggest scandal in women's basketball had nothing to do with a buzzer beater, a bad foul call, or even the outcome of a championship game? What if the real story was about something far more explosive, a betrayal so deep it's now caught the attention of the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission? That's exactly where we are right now. Fans who once celebrated the rise of Caitlin Clark, the player meant to redefine the WNBA, are now demanding answers from the very league they supported. And the accusations? They're not about missed shots or twisted ankles. They're about lies, manipulation, and the possibility of outright fraud. Because what started as whispers on social media has now erupted into a rebellion big enough to threaten the league's future. And the shocking part? We may only be scratching the surface of how far this goes. It all began with a story every sports fan knows too well, the injury update. At first, the news about Caitlin Clark's health sounded simple. A setback. Maybe serious, but something she could bounce back from. The kind of situation where a player is listed as day-to-day, where hope lingers game after game, but this wasn't just optimism. Week after week, fans were fed the same vague language. Questionable, optimistic, still being evaluated. The kind of phrases that don't actually mean anything, but keep supporters on the hook, and those supporters believed. Parents bought tickets months in advance. Students saved money just to see their hero. Families traveled across the country, booking flights and hotels, clinging to the idea that maybe tonight would be the night Clark returned, but when the curtain finally dropped, the truth was devastating. Her season wasn't in jeopardy. It was already over. And with that announcement, ticket prices didn't just dip. They collapsed. Seats that once cost $130 fell to barely $80 overnight. Other tickets crashed from nearly $90 to just $25, a 71% drop. In hours. That wasn't just disappointment. That was the bottom falling out. Fans realized they hadn't been given updates. They'd been strung along. And that betrayal cut deeper than money because it meant their trust had been sold for profit. But if that was all, maybe the anger would have faded. Instead, it turned out the injury updates were just the beginning of something much darker. To understand why the deception hurt so badly, you need to know what Caitlin Clark meant to the WNBA. She wasn't just another promising rookie. She was the golden ticket. Broadcast ratings skyrocketed whenever she played. Opposing arenas sold out when her team came to town. Merchandise sales soared, and for the first time in years, the league had a genuine superstar who could pull casual fans into the seats. Clark wasn't just a player. She was a brand. She was the cash machine the league had been waiting for. So when she went down, the financial fallout was obvious. Without Clark, the WNBA risked slipping back into irrelevance. And that's when the whispers began. Insiders claimed the league already knew her chances of returning were slim to none. But instead of being upfront, they doubled down on the illusion. Day-to-day, optimistic, questionable. Those weren't updates. They were bait. And every ticket sold, every hotel booked, every fan who rearranged their life for a chance to see her was part of the profit strategy. It wasn't just miscommunication. It was calculated, and while fans were being strung along outside the arena, inside the arena, something even darker was happening. Caitlin Clark wasn't just injured. She was targeted. The numbers are chilling. In her rookie season, one player, Clark, absorbed nearly 17% of all flagrant fouls in the entire league. Think about that. One rookie accounting for almost a fifth of the most dangerous plays. That's not random. That's a pattern. Game after game, she took elbows to the body, shoves far from the ball, and hits that went beyond normal defense. Some looked less like competitive plays and more like attempts to test her limits or end her season. Chicago Sky players, including Angel Reese, repeatedly found themselves at the center of these collisions. To many fans, it looked like hazing. Resentment toward a rookie who had stolen the spotlight before veterans had their chance. But the real shock wasn't the hits themselves. It was the silence that followed, because while Clark was being battered in plain sight, referees swallowed their whistles. Calls that would have earned technicals or ejections for other stars were ignored. And night after night, the message was clear. You can rough her up and nothing will happen. The irony, off the court, Clark's face was plastered on billboards. She was celebrated as the league's future. Yet on the court, she was left unprotected, forced to absorb punishment that no rookie, no star should ever have to endure. And when someone finally spoke up, the league's response was even more disturbing. Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White had seen enough. She watched her star rookie shoved to the floor, elbowed in the lane, hacked on drives. And she said what everyone was already thinking. This wasn't just tough defense. It was dangerous. But instead of addressing the problem, the WNBA fined her, not the referees who ignored the fouls, not the opponents who dished out the punishment. The coach, the one voice who dared to demand fairness, was the one silenced it, and that fine spoke volumes. It sent a message to every coach, every player, every insider. Speak up and you'll pay. It wasn't about protecting Clark. It wasn't even about protecting fairness. It was about protecting the illusion that everything was fine. To fans, that was the breaking point. If coaches couldn't speak and players weren't safe, then who was left to challenge the league? The answer came from the only group the WNBA couldn't silence: the fans themselves. It started small. Angry tweets, frustrated comments, threads on Reddit documenting every hard foul Clark had absorbed. But the outrage spread like wildfire. Soon, hashtags demanding accountability trended across platforms. Petitions appeared online, gathering tens of thousands of signatures. Fans weren't just venting anymore. They were organizing. And the accusations went beyond basketball. They weren't just about referees or vague injury updates. They were about deception, fraud, false advertising. Fans argued that labeling Clark day-to-day when insiders allegedly knew she was done was a deliberate strategy to mislead paying customers. That wasn't just a broken promise. That was consumer manipulation. The rebellion gained credibility when respected voices joined the chorus. Former White House staffer Sean McLean suggested Clark's treatment could even trigger federal civil rights scrutiny. ESPN's Stephen A. Smith acknowledged fans might have a case. Suddenly, this wasn't just an angry mob online. It was a movement being validated by powerful people. And when the chant started echoing in stadiums, when arenas filled with Clark jerseys began calling for investigations, instead of cheering for plays, and the league could no longer pretend it was just noise. And that's when whispers started to spread inside the commissioner's offices. Fan pressure reached a boiling point. Unverified reports began to circulate. Screenshots claiming Commissioner Cathy Engelbert had already stepped down bounced around social media. Some celebrated, others doubted. But here's the important part. Even if those rumors weren't true, the fact that they gained traction at all showed how fragile the league's leadership had become. For the first time in WNBA history, fans weren't just calling for accountability, they were making change feel inevitable. Still, Engelbert's rumored exit raised a bigger question. Would removing one face fix the culture of deception? Or would it just expose how deep the rot really went? Because if these decisions were systematic, then losing one commissioner wouldn't solve anything. It would only be the beginning. The DOJ and FTC weren't drawn in by fan hashtags. They were drawn in by the possibility of consumer fraud. Because when a league knowingly sells tickets under false pretenses, when it markets a star who insiders claim they knew wasn't coming back, that crosses into dangerous legal ground. This isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about trust. And once trust is broken, the damage isn't easily repaired. And the uncomfortable question fans now ask is simple. If they lied about this, what else have they lied about? What other injuries were misrepresented? What other games may have been influenced by selective officiating? How deep does the culture of protecting profits over players actually go? Because once investigators start digging, they don't just stop at one scandal. They pull threads. They find what people never wanted revealed. And if Clark's injury updates were only the tip of the iceberg, then the truth waiting beneath could be far worse than anyone imagines. At the center of this storm is a 23-year-old who only wanted to play basketball. Caitlin Clark dreamed of rewriting history on the court. Instead, she's become the symbol of a movement exposing everything wrong with her league. Her body has been battered. Her trust has been shattered. And yet her name is the one fans are rallying behind to demand change. It's an unfair burden, but it also proves her impact. Clark didn't just bring attention to women's basketball. She forced a spotlight on its flaws. And that spotlight is now too bright to ignore. So where does this leave us? Fans believe they were misled. Coaches have been silenced. Clark was left unprotected. And the league now faces the possibility of federal investigation. The question isn't just whether Caitlin Clark will return stronger. It's whether the WNBA itself can survive the fallout of what's being uncovered. Because if even half of these allegations are true, then this isn't just one scandal. It's the blueprint of how the league operates. And that forces us to ask, if this was only the beginning, what else will be uncovered when investigators finally pull back the curtain? Just when fans thought the scandal had reached its peak, more whispers began to surface. Whispers that suggest the Clark controversy might not even be the most shocking part of this story. Some insiders claim there are emails and internal communications that, if ever leaked, could prove beyond doubt that league executives discussed Clark's injury status weeks before the official announcement. Others suggest sponsors who poured millions into marketing campaigns built entirely around Clark are quietly considering legal action of their own. And then there's the money trail. Reports hint that certain front office figures benefited directly from the ticket surges during the day-to-day charade. If those financial records are ever made public, the fallout could be catastrophic, not just for the commissioner's office, but for the WNBA as an institution. Fans are asking a haunting question. Was Caitlin Clark simply unlucky? Or was she the pawn in a larger game designed to squeeze every last dollar from her name before the truth finally slipped out? And here's the part that should make everyone nervous. If this much has already been exposed through fan pressure alone, imagine what federal investigators armed with subpoenas and whistleblowers could uncover next. Because one thing's for sure, the Caitlin Clark saga isn't over. In fact, it may only be entering its most dangerous chapter yet.